What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Show. How is everybody doing out there on this Wednesday, October 19th of 2022? Before we get into all of our fun stuff, please, as always, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars over on Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth and go find us on the socials. Just go search the Alex Cuesta Show. You will find us there. First and foremost, Dave, what's up, dude?
Nothing much. I'm feeling great. We have another great guest here today, so I want to get into this as quickly as possible.
Yeah, we're going to get into this. We've been really fortunate that we've had a good string of guests so far that are agreeing to come on. And this one, I have to say, no offense to all of our other guests, this is certainly right now top of our list. It is Ron Coleman. He's a partner in the Dhillon Law Group, podcaster and Twitter personality. And you've definitely seen his opinions. You've seen him on there. What's going on, Ron?
I don't know. I'm feeling a lot of pressure right now. I haven't even opened my mouth, and I'm the best guest ever. Who knows how bad I'm going to suck? Come on.
You should. We're putting that pressure on you because we know you can handle it. That's why.
Yeah, that's the problem. That I set myself up like that, don't I?
Yeah. You know what? Don't be popular and don't have good opinions on social media. And then we won't want to put you on the spot.
Okay. See what we can do.
All right. So like David said, we're excited. We want to pick your brain. Let's jump right into this. So right now, one of the biggest stories that have been going on is Alex Jones, after his second trial, was fined essentially $1 billion to pay back to, I believe it was 12 different individuals from the Sandy Hook comments he made. 9 of them, I believe, not even being mentioned in the slightest. Honestly, whatever you think of Alex Jones, and I know a lot of people on both the left, the right, don't really care for him. And that's neither here nor there when it comes to this. What the question is, to me, and the implications here, Alex Jones said some things. I don't think many of us agree with what he said about the Sandy Hook families and whatever.
I sure hope not.
Yeah, I hope not. But the thing is, here in America, we have that freedom of speech. We have the First Amendment protections. What does a case like this, for you being a lawyer, when you're looking at this decision coming down, does a bell ring to you going, we're affected with the First Amendment here? What does this kind of mean for that, Ron?
It is. It's a real problem. I mean, there is a very, very narrow band of speech that is not protected.
Mm-hmm.
And that band includes defamation.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, even though defamation has been largely gutted by the courts over the, probably before your lifetime, but over the last generation or so,
mm-hmm.
It still exists as a tort, and it still exists as a form of unprotected speech.
Yep.
However, what Alex Jones did wasn't defamation. Whatever it was.
I feel like it would fall under the realm of more of a strong opinion, maybe because
No. The technical term for it is being an asshole.
Yeah. Alex Jones was an asshole.
Alex Jones used his incredible power and influence. Yep. And to a large extent, if it weren't for this, Alex Jones would be the guy who people have, and people keep saying it anyway, but I think you can't get away from Sandy Hook. Alex Jones is right about almost everything.
Yeah.
They say. I mean, you know what? I've never, the only time I saw Alex Jones, an episode, or even part of an episode of Alex Jones, was when he had my client Gavin McInnes on.
Mm-hmm.
And Gavin, who has enough personality to fill up.
Yes, he does.
I watched a man I know and like very much shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink in the presence of Alex, because Alex is just, he's a force of nature.
Larger than life is a good way to describe him.
Yeah, I don't know the guy. It's not for me to call him Alex, but he really crossed a line. He really crossed a gigantic line, and he can't pretend he didn't know. It doesn't matter. Whatever it was, defamation is the thing. There are certain distinct elements of the tort of defamation, and Harmeet Dhillon, my partner, my far more famous and successful partner, and we get inquiries for prospective defamation cases all day long, every day, 7 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we're always looking for is, as much as this hurts you, as much as this bugged you, as much as this is gets under your skin, do you really think you could prove damages here? These people have not been damaged by a defamatory statement. It was a false statement. Yes, it appears that he accused some of them of being actors. Yes. But one of the things that judges do when they look at polemical speech, rhetorical speech, is they say, in the context that it was said, would anyone take you literally? And that's why, for example, people are routinely called all kinds of names on the internet, and judges throw the cases out immediately because, guess what? Being called a Nazi, if you're anywhere to the right of Lyndon Johnson, okay, in 2022, is not even interesting.
No.
Yeah. So it's not defamation. And yes, it's a terrible free speech violation, although no one's getting any $1 billion. Alex doesn't have it to give. And as far as from what I understand, I'm not sure Connecticut law even permits them to assess it.
So I also want to jump into kind of, you're out in the public now, especially with LawTube and things like that. And, you're saying a lot there all the time. We're out here doing this show. There's plenty of people bigger than
God's work. You're doing God's work, Alex. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
I appreciate that. We try. But we're putting out our opinions. There's plenty more people, especially on the right, that are putting out their opinions that a lot of people don't agree with. And I think what we see a lot here, and, I've heard Glenn Beck say it, I've heard Tim Pool say it, I've heard a lot of these personalities say it. This goes a lot more for shut up or you're next type of decision. And that's what it kind of seems like to me. The implications of, the free press not being free anymore and censorship. And if we even talk about the press, like, is the press real? That's another podcast we can do right now. But kind of the censorship aspect of Alex Jones, you really didn't defame anybody, but we really don't like the things that you say. We don't like your rhetoric. We're not a fan of it. Here's your $1 billion fine. You have another trial coming up. I think it starts next week. Here we go. So what does that mean to you in terms of kind of what we do here and some of the people larger, just throwing out our opinions and what could potentially happen to us?
Well, I don't think as a practical matter, you and I have to worry about getting sued for defamation. Well, I certainly don't. Bring it on, man.
Yeah. We'll be calling you if we do.
Of course you will. And you'll be doing the GoFundMe next. And that works out very well for both of us sometimes.
Yeah.
Our problem isn't the laws of defamation. Our problem is being deplatformed.
Yep.
Right? Because someone over at Google or over at Twitter decides they don't like the cut of your jib, and now you're guilty of disinformation, or you're, whatever the flavor of the month is. But this use of the courts I'll tell you something interesting that's going on with defamation. So, as I mentioned to you a couple of minutes ago, and you nodded knowingly because everyone knows this, the courts have scaled away defamation to something rather unrecognizable. And in New York State, they took it even further and passed a law. They passed an anti-slap statute. And I'm not a fan of anti-slap, unlike many of my colleagues who do both plaintiffs and defense work in the defamation area. I'm rather skeptical, frankly, of
give a quick explanation for slap for some of the laymen that maybe don't pay attention as much.
Strategic lawsuit against public participation, and I love how you put that to describe the ignorant. Don't pay attention nearly as much. I wish I were as kind and gracious to my listeners as you are to yours. No, I mean, frankly, it took me like 10 years to memorize that. So it used to be a problem in the United States, as it still is to some extent in the UK, that you could prevent someone from publishing a completely true news report or saying something that was absolutely true, because someone could be threatened with a lawsuit, And you might win that lawsuit down the road, but only if you have the money to defend yourself. And if you don't, you're ruined. And being ruined is really stinks.
Dave, you want to kind of talk about the... I'm sorry, Ron. You want to finish? Go ahead, Ron.
Well, just okay. I mean, I usually say, go ahead, but I'll lose my train of thought because
go for it.
I'm a very old man. So anti-SLAPP was meant, and I believe California was the first state to have an anti-SLAPP statute. They say if you file a lawsuit merely to prevent someone from commenting on an issue that is of any public significance whatsoever, if that is proved to be the reason why you filed your lawsuit, not only will you lose the lawsuit, you're going to pay other guys attorney's fees.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a major deal because in America, we have in the U.S. we have something called the American rule, which is unlike in the U.K. Everyone pays his own legal fees under most circumstances. Mm-hmm. So this made it all of a sudden much riskier to sue someone for defamation for no good reason. What the New York legislature did was, after many years of people complaining that it was too easy, that there was a very tepid version of anti-SLAPP in New York, so they ramped it way up. And basically, you've got to be in a position to win your defamation case before you sue, in order to proceed with the case. So I don't know why New York didn't just pass a law, which they have complete power to do, and say, the tort of defamation is hereby extinguished under New York law. You can no longer win a defamation. Instead, they did this.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have now is very strict. So now that defamation is on the run, all of a sudden it has new legs because of this Alex Jones case, except for one thing. The Alex Jones decision is going to be thrown out. It's garbage.
It's an activist judge, honestly.
Yeah, I was. Go ahead, I did want to ask. I don't know how much you saw of the trial, but I saw what I could. I've seen clips, and basically everyone in there didn't look very good, at least in a courtroom sense. What did you think about what was going on during that trial?
I really didn't. I was way too busy for it, and it's interesting that I once dropped, during the Rittenhouse case, I dropped in with the Law Tube gang and watched some parts with them, but I couldn't get myself to watch this one, so I'm not the right guy to ask that question. Tell me what you mean why nobody looked good. And you're saying both sides, even the parents who were suing, sounded like weenies?
Not even the parents. Mainly just the attorney. I would say Alex Jones, lawyer, actually didn't sound that bad. He had a lot of good things that he was doing, but Alex Jones didn't help himself a lot of times. The prosecutor. I
imagine that Alex Jones is a nightmare client.
Yeah, he talked way too much, but the judge didn't sound great. The prosecutor didn't sound great. Like, there are things that they were doing that didn't seem correct, or at least professional. So that's why I wanted to ask you. But listen, we're all busy, so I completely understand that.
Everything's coming from a My Cousin Vinny courtroom now. It just seems like a lot of these lawyers just want to be Gambini, and just put on a My Cousin Vinny show because they know the cameras.
Gambini, right?
Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to jump into our next topic. Keep us moving right along here. So lately, the Biden administration decided that they wanted to come out and try and start to claim that they never said that getting a vaccine was going to prevent infection, was going to prevent you from getting COVID-19. And like Twitter does, because Twitter is a beauty and a terrible cesspool all at the same time. Receipt upon receipt was jumping down just of clips, videos, everything of this going on. And it's quite obvious that Dr. Tony Fauci, Joe Biden himself, Kamala Harris, you can go up and down the leftist gang, Pelosi, Schumer, all of them, touted that one line that go get the vaccine and you won't get infected if you get, which I'm not even calling a vaccine anymore. I'm calling it a very nice advanced treatment because it's not a vaccine. It doesn't do the job of a vaccine. From a legal standpoint, if individuals that got the vaccine then got sick from it and got COVID, would they have a legal standing to sue the government for, false, I get not even false advertising. I don't know what it would be, but because, we trust our officials for some freaking reason, we're trusting politicians again. I have no idea why, but we're trusting politicians. And would it hold up in a court of law if they could sit there and point to videos and point to Joe Biden on the bully pulpit saying these exact things? Would they have a case?
Well, your question started out one way and ended up another way. And I kind of liked how it started out because I was going to give you a wise guy answer. Standing is not the problem. Standing basically says, are you the person who was injured? That's almost the entire question when it comes to standing.
Okay.
Obviously, someone who is either injured or is the heir of someone who has been perhaps killed would have standing. But is there a cause of action? So there's a general rule in every legal system in the world, which is that the sovereign can only be sued when the sovereign permits himself to be sued.
Yep.
And sovereign immunity, and look, I never even claimed to be a libertarian, but you'd have to be a libertarian to think that it would be that anyone would ever be involved in any government function. Of course, they'd say, great, no problem. But if they were held personally responsible and financially responsible for how it went.
Yeah.
But so the answer is no. I mean, the governments do all kinds of terrible things. And what often happens is that political pressure is brought on them after those things become public and a scandal results. So Congress or a state legislature will pass a law saying, we blew it, or the government blew it, or the government blew it 30 years ago when we were all in high school, but we're going to make a fund and we're going to allow lawsuits for that bad conduct. This is because the way all this was structured has essentially been, I got to take it back. A lot of what was done in connection with the vaccines, and especially and the masking and all the stuff, has been motivated by a desire to harm Donald Trump and other Republicans. And the people who've done it are the kind of people who are comfortable letting other people die.
Marxist?
Not only Marxist, they could just be selfish pigs.
That too.
But in order to get what they want politically, they're prepared to let other people be gravely harmed or to die. But I can't say that goes all the way back to the beginning of even to the legislation, I think, that was passed, because Donald Trump was in the driver's seat then. He was, and I was actually really surprised. And believe me, I am a most decidedly non-scientific, guy. But I remember thinking at the time, a vaccines, you can't turn around a vaccine in a year.
And they're going to whatever it was.
And he was talked into this approach, into this program. And of course, everyone has 20/20 hindsight. But he did, he didn't stand up to, maybe, again, I think he'd be even less of a science guy than I am. So I can't call it all political, but the point is, whatever it was that motivated the original policies and the subsequent policies, there will never be a point in American history, certainly not during our lifetimes, when a legislature is going to say, okay, we blew it, hold us responsible. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if it was exactly warp speed or what it was that basically said, okay, you cannot sue Pfizer and Moderna no matter what happens with this vaccine. I feel like that whatever policy it was that allowed that to happen is what really kind of screwed over the whole landscape of people that took it. Because I mean, like you said, you're not really going to be able to sue the government at any time. But you could have sued the companies that made the vaccine if that didn't happen in the first place.
Yeah, although similarly, in order to get a company to come in and say, we're willing to work with you on this expedited basis. And yes, it's a gigantic upside for us financially. But by the way, think of all the companies that did work on the vaccine and their vaccines, they dropped out because they couldn't do it. Yeah. I'm thinking of Johnson & Johnson, companies that didn't succeed, didn't make the kind of money that Pfizer did, and yet nonetheless may have spent hundreds of millions or maybe even more. People aren't going to take that kind of risk. But you know what? So much misjudgment took place. And I also remember thinking, not only is it strange that we're talking about a vaccine this way in terms of time, but also, is this a virus? I grew up my entire life hearing that there's no cure for the common cold.
Yeah, there isn't. There isn't. So, and coronavirus has been around forever, and we have not been able to crack coronavirus. Now, definitely, I think that's probably one of Trump's biggest mistakes of his administration, and it kind of points to his business side acumen where, and it's not an excuse because Donald Trump made a bad decision with this, but the lockdowns, the vaccines, the way they handled it was definitely him going, I don't know this. This isn't my expertise. I'm going to lean on the people around me that are supposed to be experts. And, and we saw him do that. And again, this is definitely one of his biggest mistakes, and he owns it. He has to own it.
But Alex, wouldn't you say that would almost be a perfect way of summing up all his mistakes?
Yeah.
I don't know how Washington works. I'm going to trust these Washington people. I don't know how Congress works. I'm going to trust the Congress people.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm Ron Coleman, right? And I think I'm the smartest guy in the world. And what would I do? What would I do differently if you appointed me president today and sent me down to Washington? I mean, okay, so I have some friends who are much more Washington savvy than I do, but so did Donald Trump. Right?
I don't think you would have kept Tony Fauci in place knowing what he did with HIV.
Well, I don't
probably would have got him out of there.
I don't think that Fauci actually could be fired. I don't believe that Trump could have fired him. But getting away from the COVID issue, but how about the Department of Justice? But how about the FBI? But how about the State Department? Boom, boom, boom.
So I'm also curious here because I've seen this thrown around. I want your perspective. Could there have been a Nuremberg Code violation in the way that people were coerced? Because there was definitely a lot of coercion, with money being offered and things like that to come and take it. Could we have fallen under Nuremberg Code violations here? Because I've seen some arguments saying that because it got emergency approval by the FDA, that it then now isn't a coerced drug, that it's a illegal. What is your opinion on that?
I think that we're talking about some really esoteric areas of law that, I'll say this much. When you say that the coercion wasn't from the status of the drug, it was from the fact that people were told that they would be fired and were fired, including people who worked for the government, but also people who worked in private industry. And the government supported these policies and pressed these policies. And also schools, I mean, what the schools were doing, especially schools that were
some of them still doing
that you need to have a vaccination in order to get accepted.
But I'm talking about schools that were vaccinating kids without their parents.
Yes.
And that's a crime against humanity right there.
Yes. 100%.
So it's a train wreck. It's a train wreck. We whether or not it was sprung on us, we sprung it on ourselves, or whether it just was a natural occurrence, COVID was a gigantic acid test of the competence of our social, economic, scientific, political, and legal systems, and every one of them failed.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, it was definitely a whole entire. I think it was a good opportunity for any and all governments to see how easily we can be controlled. And as a population of America, who's supposed to be the ones that fight back, we absolutely failed that test. Not all of us, But our population, if you're looking at in generalities, we failed that test of, are we just going to sit back and take it? Or are we going to fight back? It took a lot of us a while to kind of wake up and really start fighting back. We all went with the 2 weeks. The vaccines, we were kind of like, a lot of people on the right were like, Trump said it, so we'll take it. And then when Biden came, they're like, Biden said it, we hate it. They kind of put the whole political bullshit with that. But it kind of, it's a little scary at times because, the right's supposed to be the free thinkers and this and that. We were not very free thinking when shit hit the fan, which is when we need to be the most. So it kind of became a bizarre circumstance. I'm hoping that we respond better to the next one, which is right around the corner with Russia. So we shall see what we do there. So Ron, before I got to let you go, because I've taken up a lot of your time already, you let me know that you were a baseball fan into your 20s, along with your father. And instead of letting you just enjoy the game side of it, I'm going to bring your legal brain into it so you can absolutely not enjoy the gaming side of it.
Well, I stopped enjoying the game a while ago, but I'm still fascinated by it.
It's still, a fun game. And, I'm a Yankees fan, so I'm always hurting and happy at the same exact time. But speaking of the Yankees, Aaron Judge just set the home run record. Now, for me, he's the home run champion. Even though he technically only set the AL record, in my eyes, I say he's the home run champion because the 3 people ahead of him, Barry Bonds being the most, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, are all caught cheaters, admittedly using steroids and performance-enhancing drugs, which are illegal in the game of baseball. If this was ever brought into litigation, if Aaron Judge really felt that this strong, that I am the home run king and I want to be crowned in, I have the right to, and he decided to bring this to court, who would have the better claim here? Would Aaron Judge, being I was within the rules and I set a record, be the rightful guy to say it and the MLB should crown me or I'm going to sue them? Who would he have a good case here?
You remember.
And
actually, I don't even remember. But through my shared cultural transmission, when Maris hit his 61st home run, he was the all-time one-season king. But it was with an asterisk because Babe Ruth had hit his 60 in the 154-game season, and Roger Maris had hit his in the 161-game season. So baseball, in its wisdom, decided that Roger Maris would be the champion with an asterisk, and with an asterisk became an early meme, right? With an asterisk.
Yep.
To be a baseball fan to know what with an asterisk means, that's what it means. Now, it's a funny thing. Major League Baseball, even the commissioner of baseball, they have no authority over what it says in a record book. It's funny because you're saying, what if you could bring a claim? Of course, there's no claim, but there's also no rule. That's like, I think of all the statistics that have just been invented in the last 20 years.
So
okay. So if you can make an asterisk for Roger Maris, probably there should be an asterisk for the steroid era records. Bonds is a nasty, angry guy, and he's got all kinds of I'm sure he's got all kinds of disgusting things on his shoulders besides a giant chip. But he had a huge chip on his shoulders when he was playing. But I'll never forget when what was his name? I just went blank.
Jose Canseco, McGwire.
So when they asked when McGwire was asked to testify about this, he broke down because he's not like a tough ass, angry guy like Bonds. He's like a country boy who just got onto something good and it was working like hell.
Oh yeah.
But he knew he'd done something that was wrong, but even it wasn't even really so obviously wrong. Blah blah blah. It was. You have to recognize the reality, but the fact is, we live in a time, right, when there are all these things that we once thought were clear are not clear anymore, and this is an excellent example of it. I mean, ironically, that was really we're talking about 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, which is crazy to think about.
Now. But then again, what is I don't know what the hell's happening now. I mean, today's ball. I mean, I remember lots of people said about Babe Ruth, he never. He never faced the best pitchers of his era because they were black. He didn't play at night, which a lot of ball players held was a more challenging environment to hit in. He wasn't, on the, they didn't have the kind of whatever. So it is always difficult to compare eras. I'll say this much: these guys get a hell of a lot more money than any of those other guys ever did.
Oh yeah.
Whether they get asterisk or not, they're doing just fine.
Yeah, that's very true.
They certainly are. So just give me your opinion on this. Should we hold guys who cheat in that regard? Should we as fans be able to, in our brains, allow them to kind of hold those records? Or what should you as a fan? Would you sit there and say Aaron Judge is the home run king right now?
I consider Barry Bonds' career to be a fraud.
Which sucks about Barry Bonds, because before he clearly started using, when he came into the league, he was already one of the best baseball players, if not the best. He was a 30-30 guy. He absolutely did not need to do what he did to potentially go down as the greatest player of all time at the end of his career. So I'm more mad at the fact that he's like a tragic case. And like you said, he's an angry and egotistical guy, and he needed to make sure that he was going to be cemented there. And that, it just, as a fan, it annoys me that I was robbed of that.
Yeah, but you know what? That's a problem with us baseball fans, is that we think that these are really things that that are ours, and B, that we're robbed of. Just make believe. Yeah. It's an entertainment. It's a form of entertainment. At its best, it can be absolutely fantastic. When my dad was growing up, and the Yankees were the Yankees because they were in New York, and that's where the money was, and that meant that was how they were going to win. And they had, I don't know if you know that they basically had a deal with the White Sox, that the White Sox would ship the Yankees their best prospects because the White Sox would never be competitive in the AL.
Yeah.
So the Yankees would take care of the White Sox. The White Sox would always hold up what was called the second division. In those days, there were no divisions in the leagues. But what second division meant then was they'd be the best of the worst. And they would always have people coming into Comiskey Park, which I actually went to when I was at law school in Chicago. But then when I was, when I started following baseball more closely in the 70s, that was the beginning of, the Yankees had not won the pennant since 64. And then in 76, Chris Chambliss hit his home run, and we all went, ballistic, and Reggie Jackson. And that was a great era for baseball. But that was already a completely different era for baseball.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you couldn't compare. And my dad was in the stadium when twice Mantle hit the facade.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And my dad said, the second it left the bat, no one in the place had any question that it was going out. The question was he going to hit it out of the stadium? And it was so quiet, you could hear the ball hit the facade.
That's incredible.
That's awesome.
All I learned from that story is guys need to go back to drinking and smoking like right before the game. They need to get wasted in the.
But here's the other part of it. You also have to wear a suit and tie to the park, like those guys in those Ebbets Field pictures.
With the cigar in your mouth, rocking it in with the girl on your arm, a cigar in your mouth. I'll see you later, honey. I got a ball game to play. All right, Ron. Dave, do you have anything else before we let Ron go?
No, I've heavily enjoyed this.
Real pleasure, guys. Nice talking.
It was a great time. Again, he's Ron Coleman. He's a partner over at Dhillon Law Group, podcaster, Twitter personality. Definitely go out there and listen to everything he does. Support him. Ron, anything that you would like to plug before we let you go?
Just be good Americans and have faith in God.
And be good Americans. Have faith in God. Go find Ron on YouTube, everybody. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. As always, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate us 5 stars, spread this word of mouth. Go find us on the socials. Have a good one, everyone. We'll be back next week.